If I was a criminal, what kind of criminal I'd be? I'd be like that sexy Bond villain. But also,
You know, I want to be that guy in the background that kind of like draws the map, and then I wait in my lair for my minions to go out there and handle the dangerous parts.
It would have something to do with accounting fraud. But not on purpose, it's because I'm bad at math.
I would pull off a heist that stole money from the people who shouldn't have all the money. But for me to be involved in a heist, the jackpot would have to be astronomical.
Not every criminal can pull off a heist, but they all know that the best crime pays big. A heist is a high-stakes robbery that uses an elaborate plan for a lot of numbers in the pocketbook.
I've met people who said I pulled off a heist. It was 500 bucks. A heist to me is a couple $100,000.
That's a lot of dough for just a minute's work.
Million, few million, and more.
A heist is not for your everyday, low-level scumbag.
You have to have nerves of steel. You have to have a brain that can plan something.
Nobody sees the others without a mask.
And you have to have good connections.
Heists are often ripping off someone who's incredibly wealthy or a faceless bank.
That's why heists are so popular, because everybody likes a good rogue.
With a combined total of over $275 million in stolen loot, these are 5 of the greatest heists in history, from the earliest to the most recent. Stories of who gets away with it, but mostly who doesn't.
Because if you succeed at a heist, we don't know who you are. We've really been indoctrinated from childhood to have strong desires for wealth. So it's not surprising that we'd be easily tempted to get those things by whatever means possible.
Bruce Reynolds is the mastermind of the great train robbery. He is the most unlikely of masterminds.
The Army rejected him because of his weak eyesight. He wanted to be a journalist, but never got a chance to write. He was a messenger for a while, and then a petty crook. Bruce meets robber Ronnie Biggs in Wandsworth Prison and decides to stop working alone. Because Bruce is tired of being a loser. He wants to be a winner in the big numbers game. Our earliest heist story starts in London, 1963. Bank cards don't exist yet, and credit cards have just been introduced. Your options for stealing large sums of money are places that house large sums of money. But they have a ton of security. Then, Bruce gets a tip about a Royal Mail train, and he hatches a plan.
There would be a big chunk of money in the mail bags on that train. That money was on its way to be destroyed down in England. It was coming from Glasgow. Therefore, it meant that they were used notes and untraceable notes.
Bruce's plan is to stop the train and remove the money without anyone taking notice. It's deceptively simple, but it just might work. They just need to focus on the number 30.
A heist is the most exciting thing in the criminal world, as far as I'm concerned. You walk away from it with a little bit of like an FU to like the powers that be. A heist involves more planning than a typical robbery. You have to have somebody who's the quote-unquote mastermind.
Bruce decides that the train can be stopped for 30 minutes before anyone gets suspicious. So he gathers a team of 15 thieves, including Ronnie Biggs, to haul out as many mailbags as they can with no violence.
The great train robbery, it's like something out of a cowboy movie.
It begins in the dead of night on August 8th, 1963. 15 men are watching the clock. These men will have just 30 minutes to try to pull off the biggest train robbery in British history. Just after 3 a.m., the driver of the Royal Mail Express sees a red signal. Not knowing the green signal had been covered by the robbers.
On board come a bunch of the robbers. They make it very clear to the people working on the train this is a robbery and that they shouldn't resist. The only resistance they get is from Jack Mills, who's the train driver. And because he resists them, they whack him on the head. So that was the first cock-up.
But time won't stop because you make a mistake. The train has 12 cars. But the gang are only interested in number 2 behind the locomotive, known as the high-value packages coach. Racing against the clock, they uncouple the other 10 cars. And to avoid any witnesses, Bruce has them move the train half a mile to the designated unloading spot.
Let's get a move on. Let's go faster.
With only 10 minutes left, the gang form a human chain moving 120 bags of cash, weighing an estimated 2.5 tons. It's been 30 minutes and the coach isn't empty. But wisely, they stick to Bruce's plan. 8 bags are left behind. They're so quick that the other 68 postal workers in the 10 other coaches have no idea what's happened.
Quick, before the cops show up.
15 guys split an estimated 150,000 pounds each, equivalent to $3.8 million today. At the time, the average yearly salary in Britain is about 1,000 pounds. That means each crew member makes close to 150 years worth of wages in the space of 30 minutes.
When we did a heist, we had a plan. If we all got chased and we had to split up, who were we gonna contact? Where were we going? There had to be a safe house. Maybe we'd meet.
The safe house is the place where Bruce planned for the gang to divvy up their loot, confirm their alibis, and make sure they cover their tracks.
Off they go to the farm that they have hired about half an hour away. They feed the cat, they play a bit of Monopoly.
Bruce and his gang have no plans of going straight to jail. But when the police go public and comb a 30-mile radius from the robbery site, the gang has to scramble.
They were looking for a hideout within 30 miles of Cheddington, and they found it here at this farmhouse. And it was because it so completely fitted the police description that Tip-Off named this place.
As these police photographs show, the farm was left in a state of disarray. Fingerprints confirm that Bruce and his band of crooks are responsible for the robbery, but they're nowhere to be found.
This is a team of 15 individuals who then flee around the globe. A manhunt takes place on a scale not witnessed before.
Within a month, the gang's safe house becomes a tourist attraction. The owner of the farm charges an entrance fee, and the police, embarrassed with the enormity of the crime, double down on the hunt to capture the culprits.
They carry on searching until they find almost all of them.
Some members were never identified, but 12 were convicted within a year of the heist. The judge said it would be positively evil to show leniency in the country's biggest robbery. So he dishes out double penalties for a total of 307 years of imprisonment. Mastermind Bruce Reynolds manages to evade the law for 5 years.
He went to Mexico for a while, then to Canada, and then he came back to England where he was eventually caught.
He spends 10 years in lockup before being released in 1978. But one convicted man has no intention of serving his full term. Ronnie Biggs and his tale of 3 continents, 1 baby, and 35 years on the run.
Ronnie Biggs is perhaps the most famous of all of the great train robbers.
3 weeks after the Great Train Robbery, Ronnie is arrested and sentenced to 30 years. He serves 15 months back in Wandsworth before scaling a prison wall and dropping onto a mattress on the roof of a waiting removal van. From there, he begins his new life of living on the lam.
He got plastic surgery in Paris to change his appearance. He moved to Australia. Then, when the police were after him there, he moved to Brazil.
He becomes a musician and a media darling who'll talk about the heist to anyone who'll listen.
The only happy issue from the train robbery is the fact that semi-honest money has arisen. When I say semi-honest, I mean money that's been paid by newspapers for our stories.
After 10 years living the high life in Rio, Scotland Yard shows up and tries to arrest him. But luckily, Mr. Big Shot got his girlfriend pregnant.
Under Brazilian law, if somebody has a child under the age of 21, they can't be extradited to another country.
So the police, they knew where Ronnie Biggs was, but they couldn't get him.
He becomes an international celebrity and begins hosting tourists.
He lived this almost charmed life in Brazil, inviting people to buy a ticket to his barbecues, and he would tell stories of the great train robbery, and you could have your photo taken with him. He's perhaps the quintessential criminal celebrity.
In 1981, a gang of ex-soldiers kidnap him outside a restaurant and bundle him onto a yacht. They want a reward for bringing him back to Britain, but their yacht breaks down in Barbados.
Barbados authorities say that he's been brought there illegally, and they allow him to go back to Brazil.
So Ronnie Biggs not only managed to escape from prison and evade the authorities by moving around the world, he even managed to evade a kidnapping attempt. No one could touch him.
In our society, few of us have great wealth and power, but we can relate to someone who has little but does a lot with it.
After 35 years of freedom, 72 is the number that sends him back to Britain. Mr. Big Shot announces that he'll return to the UK.
People saw this figure arriving and barely able to function, and I think people felt, why lock him up?
He's 72 years old and not in good health. Ronnie is immediately arrested and sent back to the slammer. 8 years and numerous health scares later, he's released just before his 80th birthday. He dies 4 years later.
Most of the details about the great train robbery have been uncovered, but there's one detail that remains a little bit mysterious. Who was the inside man?
99 out of 100 heists, they have an inside guy. People come to you for all different reasons. They get in credit card debt, they get in over their heads with gambling. Maybe they route trucks and they say, hey, at 5 o'clock, this truck leaves this place and goes here. It's like you worked there for 20 years, you know everything.
Someone shared train schedules and contents that were critical in the Great Train Robbery, and there's been many guesses about his identity.
One is supposedly somebody working in the post office who tipped them off, but I think we will never know who the missing character was.
And for our next heister, working on the inside means he's practically invisible.
Have I stolen anything from work? It's not stealing if you take a ream of paper. It's paper I was going to use there anyway.
Have I ever stolen something from work? Yes, all the time.
I steal toilet paper all the time from my work. Yeah, that's expensive. More accurately, my are expensive.
Our second great heist takes us 34 years forward to Los Angeles, 1997. Alan Pace is a young American man from Compton. He has a job that pays $25 an hour, which isn't bad, but at work, it's like he doesn't even exist.
It's very tempting if you're working in a place where you see hundreds of thousands of dollars slipping through your fingers and you think, what's that all about?
In 1997, Alan Pace is working for Dunbar Armoured as a sort of safety officer. So he's looking after things like fire extinguishers, those sorts of things.
Okay, that one works.
Alan, in his job, has been very busy for the last 2 years gathering insider information. He knows what the security guards are doing. He knows where the security cameras are and when they move.
Because he's invisible at work, nobody there notices that Alan's casing the joint. He's cool, calculating, and sets the pace for the heist.
Because he's gathering the information, he's able to come up with a plan.
The pacemaker recruits 5 childhood friends and supplies them with detailed floor plans, ski masks, pistols, a shotgun, and radio headsets. But then disaster strikes. he suddenly gets noticed at work and is fired for something completely unrelated.
You're fired. Why me?
When he's fired out of the blue, he has to pull his plans forwards rapidly.
The next night, the pacemaker and his gang go to a house party to establish an alibi.
Creating this alibi, that you have a party, was smart on this particular occasion, the level of planning and daring involved.
Then they slip out of the house and into their robber gear.
His key card still was valid, so they get in to Dunbar Armored.
The employees are subdued with duct tape, and the gang gets their money with no issue.
When I did a heist, I wanted the biggest gun there was. I wanted a .357 with a 6-inch barrel, or a nickel-plated .45 that shines off the sun. I wanted that person to be so scared because I knew that if they didn't fight back, there wouldn't be any injuries. It wasn't like we wanted to hurt anybody.
After the heist, the pacemaker and his crew take their $18.9 million bounty into a 14-foot-long safe space and head back to the party. It's one of the biggest cash heists in U.S. history. After the Dunbar heist, LA cops and the FBI pull out all the stops. Because he was just fired, Allen's name comes up in the investigation. They start running surveillance, but the pacemaker stays cool. There's no flashy purchases, and he's living with his mom.
Sonny, dinner's ready.
The only thing the cops have is part of a taillight recovered at the scene. They run a forensic investigation and determine it's from the getaway car.
I think the ideal getaway car would actually be not like a nice car, like a Honda Accord.
My brain immediately is like Lamborghini, but then people are probably gonna spot me. I don't think I'd get away.
A Nissan Cube, because not a single person is gonna be like, that person is a criminal. A Nissan Cube says like dad going through a midlife crisis and shows very wrong.
You know, we ain't going in there with a GTO with the engine sticking out of the hood, and that's for the movies. You just need to get away.
The getaway car was immortalized by U.S. bank robber John Dillinger when he wrote a letter to Henry Ford thanking him for making such a fast car. John Dillinger's Ford Model A was put up for auction in 2010 and sold for $165,000. Bonnie and Clyde used a Ford V8 Deluxe during their final crime spree. At the time, it was the fastest car on the road despite the 160 bullet holes, and cost about 50% of the average person's annual income. Alan Pace's getaway car is a humble 14-foot-long U-Haul. You can rent one for about $50 a day. It helped him evade the law for more than 2 years. But then his friend Eugene pays someone in cash and leaves the Dunbar straps on the bundle. It's a stupid mistake, and it gets reported.
It seems to be that we have some amazing heisters, but one of the heisters is a rubbish businessman at the other end.
The cops run Eugene's name and discover he rented a 14-foot-long U-Haul the day before the crime. That 14 feet may have helped Alan carry out the heist, but it also ended up being his downfall, because Eugene becomes a snitch.
When the law finally caught up with us, it wasn't on account of any mistakes we had made during a robbery. It was on account of a rat. You know, guy snitches. And you can't control that. I would never do that. Like, what the
14 feet and $18.9 million get Alan Pace 24 years in lockup.
I can relate to Alan Pace's story. I live in Los Angeles. You're constantly being exposed to what a wealthy lifestyle looks like. That's going to create a temptation to obtain these things by any means necessary.
There's never been a time when the gap between the richest and the poorest has been as great.
The average American makes about $50,000 a year. Meanwhile, Tesla founder Elon Musk once made $11 billion in a year. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' base salary is $82 million a year. But with a net worth of approximately $200 billion, he's the richest man in the world. The 50 richest Americans are worth as much as the poorest 165 million Americans. It's no wonder we like to root for the little guy.
The reason we root for the little guy is because we are the little guy.
Nobody wants to see, like, Goliath crushing David. Like, that's not fun.
It's like the Robin Hood effect. Even though technically what they're doing isn't great, you still want that person to win versus, you know, the corporation with the evil man up top.
Boy, do we love to stick it to the man. In a society where there's a lot of inequality, there's going to be resentment bred.
Alan Pace was able to take advantage of being a faceless employee. Even now, no image of him can be found, and he's out of prison. Anonymity and patience is key when planning your next heist, especially if you're planning the most complicated heist in history.
If I was presented with a lock with 100 million combinations, I would give up after 3.
I would try 6 combinations, and if I didn't get it in that, I'm hiring Charlize Theron.
If a lock had 100 million combinations, I would give up immediately. Unless my cat was behind that door and I had to save him, then I would never give up.
Imagine a lock with 100 million possible combinations. If you punch in a new number every 10 seconds, that lock could take almost 32 years. But 100 million combinations don't scare our next heister, because his diamond heist has been 40 years in the planning. This is Leonardo Notarbartolo. He was born in Palermo, Italy, and he was destined to be a thief. As a child, he's sent out by his mother to buy milk.
Milk.
Leonardo finds the shopkeeper asleep and takes the 5,000 lira, or the equivalent of about $8, from the till. It will get him in trouble with his mother. But he's discovered his calling.
He has his sights set on jewels.
40 years later, Leo's plan to steal diamonds is in full swing. He moves to the diamond district in Antwerp, Belgium, and poses as a gem importer.
He starts to shadow jewelers to see what their mannerisms are. He sets himself up as this suave, charming jeweler.
How you doing?
He is a real gentleman.
People trusted him and didn't suspect him because they saw him going in and out of the building every single day.
Apart from his carrots, Leonardo's greatest assets are his good looks, his charm, and his million-dollar smile. Unlike Alan Pace, who was an inside man, Leonardo has to become an inside man to break into one of the most sophisticated vaults on the planet, holding over 125 million in diamonds.
He was able to gain access to the place where the diamonds were stored and not create suspicion.
He rents a safety deposit box in the same vault as the diamonds. It's just one of 189, but it gives him the opportunity to launch a painstaking surveillance mission using a digital camera hidden in a pen.
He gathers all the information he needs to mastermind this plan.
18 months and hundreds of photos later, Leonardo is ready to strike. Antwerp is home to the world's only specialized diamond police force, dubbed the Diamond Squad. It's got 60 surveillance cameras within its 3-square-block area, and at its heart is a vault, 2 stories underground and with 10 layers of security. About 80% of the world's rough diamonds pass through here, and $3 billion worth of sales happen annually. If you're going to try the ultimate diamond heist, this is the place.
When I start to put the team together, I put guys together that know what they're doing. I got guys who knew how to bypass alarms. I got guys who know how to use a blowtorch. I got guys who know how to cut a hole in the ceiling.
To break into the vault with 100 million combinations, 100 Million Leo put together a team of Italian thieves. The Genius, an alarm specialist. The King of Keys, a wizened locksmith. The Monster, a skilled electrician and the muscle of the crew. And Speedy, a friend who will remain outside in the getaway car with Leo, listening to police scanners.
The guys that you take on a heist have to have big, big goyons. These guys aren't afraid of anything. Somebody nervous makes mistakes. You got live weapons. We're not trained. We learned how to use guns in our basement by shooting at telephone books.
After more than 40 years of learning the craft and 2.5 years of surveillance, Leonardo sends his team in on a Saturday night. They make it undetected into the antechamber of the vault. Now, they've got to defeat 10 layers of security. The massive steel door weighs in at 3 tons, and the first layer of security is a closed-circuit security camera that guards it.
They managed to disable the CCTV and insert archive footage in there instead.
The next layer? The vault door's combination dial has 100 million possible combinations. Thanks to Leo's pen camera footage, the team knows the right one. But they still need a one-of-a-kind, 1-foot-long key. That's security layer 3.
There are then seismic alarms, and these are silent alarms, so you don't even know if you set them off or not.
They used a kind of hairspray to damage the sensor, which would set off an alarm if there was any movement.
After they manage to open the door, they use an aluminum device to deceive a magnetic sensor. Then they break through a locked steel grate and disable another camera.
They then are faced by thermal sensors sensing their body heat. They also have to overcome light sensors, so everything has to be done in darkness.
They only flick on flashlights for a second or two at a time. To the final layer, Leo gave them the code for a keypad that controls the internal alarms. Against all odds, the team defeats 10 layers of security and enter the vault.
So they have to use a custom-made drill to get into the various security boxes, and they managed to empty 109 out of 189 boxes.
Believe it or not, 100 Million Leo steals $100 million worth of diamonds.
That's a successful heist.
Nordo Bartolo spent years both figuring out how to break into the safe, but also ingratiating himself within the community so that no one would suspect him. He really had a long game.
The long game is when a criminal takes a long time to plan a heist, with the expectation of a long payout. The Antwerp diamond heist isn't detected until Monday morning when the vault is opened.
You did it. You pulled it off. You got it. Then you bring yourself back down and you try to think, is everybody all right? Did anybody leave anything behind?
For all of 100 Million Leo's genius, he's undone by $5. Bags of garbage left in the woods tie him to the heist.
They'd bought a sandwich nearby, and I think one of them still had the receipt. Who would have thought a discarded sandwich was enough to get the police onto you?
A $5 sandwich gets 100 Million Leo a 10-year prison sentence. But he gets out 4 years early for good behavior. Good behavior and a long game can be what separates masterminds from thugs, and they transform a French thief into a media darling.
If I was gonna steal a famous work of art, it would probably be Vincent van Gogh's irises. I could probably look at that every single day of my life.
If I was gonna steal a famous work of art, it would be that banana, because people would expect it the least. Make sure the laser grid's up for the Mona Lisa, but like, don't worry about the banana.
I would steal the statue of David, because if you've seen his genitalia, it would make me feel better about myself.
Parisian-born Viron Tomik claims his devious tendencies started when he was a kid. His parents sent him to live with his grandmother in Bosnia for a few years, and he became skilled at scaling Mostar's stone bridges, and then dropping into the water below, just for kicks. At the age of 10, Viron does his first heist, climbing 10 feet through the open window of a library. He steals 2 beautiful and very expensive antique books, which a disapproving friend later returns. But Viron is hooked. When he moves back to Paris, he wants to surround himself with beautiful and expensive things.
At an art gallery, he is blown away by the beauty of the art that he sees as a teenager.
He was fascinated by Renoir and wanted to be a painter, and his father had told him, you know, nobody makes a living as a painter.
Teen rebellion kicks in. he starts going with friends to Père Lachaise, the huge cemetery in Paris, where he develops his acrobatic skills, jumping from mausoleum to mausoleum.
From the age of 16, he's scaling the facades of multi-story buildings in Paris. He's seen leaping between rooftops and uses crossbows and carabiners to crawl into apartments while the occupants are asleep. He's given the nickname of L'Araigné, or the Spider-Man.
He really enjoys the finer things in life, fine cheeses and wines, and this extends into artwork.
One night, he has a dream that he steals 5 masterpieces from a museum. He takes it as a sign that he's about to do something great. In 2017, Salvator Mundi by Leonardo da Vinci sold for $450.3 million. Every year, an estimated $6 billion worth of art is stolen. Art theft is comparable in dollar value to arms dealing, drug trafficking, and money laundering. People love art.
So cheap.
And so do thieves.
They steal it either because it's been ordered by somebody or in order to sell it. But there are some people who steal paintings because they just enjoy having an extraordinary painting in their possession.
Lots of crimes are described as victimless crimes. In the case of heists, there's no one individual that walks away hurt because of insurance. So they're not hurt in the long term by what occurs.
It's 2010. Paris's Museum of Modern Art is home to more than 15,000 masterpieces and a destination for 800,000 tourists each year. Only Spider-Man isn't a tourist. He's on a scouting mission.
Scouting missions are absolutely essential if you're going to carry out a proper heist. You have to do your homework.
Outside, he notices one window is blocked from the security cameras by a parapet.
Ooh la la, those are some nice statues.
Which during the day is used by local skateboarders. Inside, he sees motion sensors that flick from green to red whenever anyone passes by. But many are stuck on green. Full of fearlessness and daring, Spider-Man starts to weave his web of deception.
There are things that happen in your life that maybe drain you of certain fears. One guy climbs a mountain, another woman goes skydiving. You know, those are to overcome certain fears. Same thing when it came to a heist. It becomes part of your life. You know, your life is a crime in progress.
Paris, the city of light. But if you want to steal art, you need darkness. It's midnight on May 14th, 2010. The Spider-Man is on the hunt for his prey, and the number 8 looms large. Out of sight of the security cameras, Spider-Man dabs the window frame with paint-stripping acid. It's taken him 8 nights, but he's finally able to pull out the screws.
He uses suction cups to remove the glass, and he has bolt cutters to cut through the metal grate inside.
He climbs inside, then climbs straight back out.
What criminals do is they see if the alarm goes off, and that's exactly what Tomik did. He wandered by the Seine just to see if anybody appeared.
He waits 15 minutes. When no police turn up and the motion sensors are still on green, he goes back in and sets his sights on the priceless art.
He had been commissioned to steal a Légère. He stole it, and while he was in there, he noticed, oh, a Modigliani, a Matisse, a Picasso, and a Braque, and took 5 paintings while he was inside.
He then leaves with this bundle of artwork and drives away.
When the police arrive the next morning, they find 5 empty picture frames, worth an estimated total of 104 million euros, or about $112 million. There hasn't been an art heist of this magnitude in a decade.
The great problem with art crimes is that there's no way of putting it on the open market and selling it.
That means even an art thief working alone needs accomplices.
You gotta have a fence. You may as well steal nothing if you don't have a fence.
The fence is a person who takes the stolen loot off the hands of the robber, stashes it until everything cools down, and then resells it to individual buyers.
I would go to my fence and say, what would you give me on this? And he might tell me I'll give you 20 cents on the dollar. Maybe I'll try to get him up to 30 cents, and we'll negotiate to a quarter. But whatever it is, we made that deal before I robbed him, so that I know as soon as it's done, I could take it to him.
The public wants to know who stole the 5 paintings.
The most expensive work taken appears to be this Picasso, worth an estimated $28 million.
And 1 year later, they get their answer.
This wasn't a big team of art thieves. No, this is the French Spider-Man.
The Spider-Man is working with antiques dealer Jean-Michel Corvez to hide the paintings and sell at a later date. Spider-Man seems safe, but he can't keep his mouth shut.
He started boasting at a party about his successful heist.
I just did the most amazing thing.
As a result, he got reported, and ultimately, he confessed to the police.
If you're planning a big heist, you better hope you also have the personality trait of being good at keeping a secret.
The prosecutor proclaims that Viron stole masterpieces from all of humanity.
Je regrette les faits et gestes que j'ai commis envers le musée. Je suis sincèrement désolé.
But the press, thrilled by his acrobatic prowess, catapult him to superhero status.
I think people are sympathetic to the fact that he's carried out this extraordinary crime and therefore not too upset that the only sentence he gets is 8 years.
An 8-day job gets Viron 8 years, which is surprisingly lenient for our 8-legged thief. The trial was in 2017, which means he gets out in 2025. The stolen paintings were never found, so it's possible they will be sold for millions once Viron and his accomplice get out of jail. But if you're playing the long game like 100 Million Leo and the Spider-Man, how old is too old for that one last job?
What do I think the average age of a heister is? I bet like 22.
The average age of a heister would be about 45. I feel like being a heister is like a young man's game, right? Because you got to be able to like be flexible and avoid those like lasers and stuff.
What's the difference between a perfect heist and a total disaster? 275 years and a couple of pints. This hole is what the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit staff first saw when they opened the vault in London's Diamond District on April 7th, 2015. But the cops have a lead. The security video shows 2 men disguised as gas workers scoping the outside of the vault. A white van pulls up. Additional crew members unload gear. This is all the police had to go on, and all the heisters had was 7%.
Let's say you're doing a business or a bank or something that's closed for like a 3-day holiday weekend. You get in there and you got the whole weekend.
It's April 3rd, 2015, Good Friday of Easter weekend. After a successful scouting mission the day before, an alarm inside the vault is triggered, and the Hatton Garden robbers spring into action.
They had an alarms specialist who was known only to them as Basil, which stood for the best alarms specialist in London. He got them into the building.
The alarm sends out an emergency text. A security guard arrives at the scene. He checks the front doors and sees that they are still locked.
False alarms happen all the time, so they're quite used to it. Off he goes.
The guard is unaware that beneath his feet, burglars are currently drilling through the concrete wall of the vault. They create a hole that is 20 inches deep, 18 inches wide, and 10 inches high. But the hole opens up to a heavy cabinet. They have to come back the next day with a battering ram and are able to knock the cabinet over. They ransack just 7% of the vault, opening 73 of the 999 safe deposit boxes. In this case, 7% isn't such a meager number. It equates to an estimated $20 million worth of diamonds, gold, and jewelry. It's the biggest heist in British history.
Diamond traders in this famous street were stunned.
People, obviously, who probably aren't insured, have lost everything.
The investigation is led by the Flying Squad, an elite unit within London's Metropolitan Police Department.
It's organised, it's sophisticated, it's people who have planned it and they know how they were going to go about and commit this crime.
But the police have little or nothing to go on. There are no fingerprints, no forensic traces, and on the CCTV outside, the thieves were careful not to show their faces.
Once you got what you went in for, that's the first time when you feel like you got away clean, the excitement level is like up there.
But that excitement doesn't last long. The diamonds are gone, but the heisters can be found in the numbers. In this case, automatic number plate recognition.
They committed the perfect theft, but everything that happened after that was a disaster.
The thieves may have disabled the CCTV cameras inside the vault, but they didn't disable the 160 security cameras that monitor the streets outside.
CCTV in London is really very extensive. An average Londoner can expect to be captured on CCTV 300 times in a single day. There are well over 500,000 cameras scattered through London.
It's said that for every 12 person, there's one CCTV camera. It's very difficult to go anywhere without being identified.
These cameras capture the image of a distinctive white Mercedes with a black roof and black alloy wheels, making repeat trips to the Hatton Garden area.
As a result, the license plate is matched to a Kenny Collins. So the police track him down.
The police attach a tracking device to the Mercedes, which leads them to two other career criminals, Brian Reeder and Terry Perkins. They track their mobile phones across London, which leads to the three of them being filmed by the police inside the Castle pub.
They hear these heisters boasting about the fact that they have committed the greatest, the biggest effing robbery of all time. They are really proud of themselves.
But loose lips are nothing to be proud of. In fact, for the Hatton Garden heisters, they're full of regret.
Have I ever revealed too much after a few drinks? Yeah. Has it everybody? I have 100% revealed too much after drinking many a drinks.
That's why apple-flavored vodka is a big no for me.
If you want to plan a heist, you should select guys for your team that are teetotalers.
This morning, 12 addresses have been raided across London and Kent area.
While searching the homes of the Hatton Garden suspects, the police find a copy of Forensics for Dummies, and on a computer, a series of Google searches on industrial drills. But what shocks the world is the discovery that the perpetrators are no spring chickens.
The Hatton Garden heisters were largely in their 70s. This was an elderly team.
Well done. Once you retire, you have to find a hobby. So if it's stealing $20 million worth of jewelry, good on them.
Just thinking about my grandpa, who's also 70, he, like, seriously hurt himself trying to go pee the other day, so.
One of them had diabetes and had to have injections during the course of the burglary. Others had urinary problems.
But despite their infirmaries, they still managed to bust their way into the vault.
When the arrest started being made, they became known as the Diamond Wheezers because they were elderly. The French papers called them the Grandad's Gang, Gang du Papis.
This was an elderly team.
Well done. Once you retire, you have to find a hobby. So if it's stealing $20 million worth of jewelry, good on them.
Just thinking about my grandpa, who's also 70, he, like, seriously hurt himself trying to go pee the other day, so.
One of them had diabetes and had to have injections during the course of the burglary. Others had urinary problems.
But despite their infirmaries, they still managed to bust their way into the vault.
When the arrest started being made, they became known as the Diamond Wheezers because they were elderly. The French papers called them the Grandad's Gang, Gang du Papis.
The Diamond Geezers really are in a league of their own. Research shows that those who heist typically have a solid decade of experience above and beyond the common thief. Typical robbers and thieves are between the ages of 24 and 27, whereas the average age of a heister is 36.1 years. But the diamond geezers blow those numbers out of the water with an average age of 69 years.
Hey, has anybody seen my walker?
And a combined age of 275 years. But all that potential wisdom doesn't balance out their ignorance of modern surveillance technology.
The judge told them that they were seen as analog criminals in a digital age because they were unaware of some of the ways that they might be traced.
14 million pounds is stolen from Hatton Garden, and only 4.2 million is recovered. If there is still some loot stashed away, one can only hope the long game isn't too long for these old farts. Today, the security measures around banks, vaults, and museums have gotten too advanced for most heisters.
The main criminal intelligence now goes into cybercrime. It's just a bloke sitting at a laptop transferring money into his bank account.
On August 10th, 2021, hackers stole $613 million in cryptocurrency, the largest heist of its kind to date. Cybercrime is not nearly as exciting a story to tell, but it's the future of great heists, using new and more sophisticated ways of sticking it to the man.
The evolution of a criminal is like the evolution of any other industry. So if you're not scared of the number, then there's nothing different. It's just a bigger take. The difference is how big you could think.
Sometimes people can just jack crazy amounts of money, go full Robin Hood, and like just to give the finger to the system.
If I was gonna be on the run, I'd probably go somewhere tropical, just because if you're gonna be on the run, you might as well do it with a tan.
I mean, it seems pretty important to have an inside man because most of the stuff that you want is on the inside, so it'll help to have a man there.
What kind of getaway car would I drive? I would say a souped-up Dodge Caravans with a couple baby seats. Yeah, you want to definitely confuse the police.